In the dusty heart of the Arizona Territory, where the sun scorched the earth like an unrelenting forge, two brothers stood on the gallows with nooses tied around their necks. Jack and Elias Harlan, weathered by years of prospecting in the unforgiving canyons, had stumbled upon a secret that sealed their fate. It wasn't gold or silver that doomed them, but the knowledge of a hidden vein of poison in the town's water supply, a deadly arsenic leak from an old mine, concealed by the corrupt mayor and his cronies to keep the land's value soaring. The brothers, simple men with calloused hands and honest hearts, had tried to warn the folks, but whispers turned to accusations, and now the crowd below jeered, hungry for frontier justice. As the trapdoor creaked beneath their boots, Jack locked eyes with Elias, whispering, "We did right by him, brother. That's all that matters." But in that moment of despair, a lone figure on horseback rode into the square. A rancher named Harlan Hank Whitaker, his face etched with the lines of a life spent under endless skies. Hank Whitaker was no stranger to hardship. Born to immigrant parents who fled famine in Ireland, he had built his ranch from nothing but grit and goodwill, sharing his bounties with neighbors during lean times. It was the kind of man who mended fences for widows without asking for pay, who rode miles to deliver medicine to sick children in remote homesteads. The townsfolk called him Saint Hank, half in jest, half in awe, for his acts of kindness were as reliable as the morning sun. But on this day, as he dismounted his mare and pushed through the murmuring crowd, his usually calm demeanor burned with quiet fury. He had overheard the brothers tale from a sympathetic bartender the night before, the arsenic poisoning that had claimed his own wife's life years ago, dismissed as bad luck by the mayor. Hank had always suspected foul play, but proof eluded him until now. "Oh!" he bellowed, his voice cutting through the chaos like a rifle shot. The executioner paused, rope in hand, as all eyes turned to the rancher. The Major, a portly man with a mustache like twisted barbed wire and as cold as a winter creek, stepped forward with a sneer. "This ain't your business, Whitaker. These men are traitors, spreading lies to incite panic. They know a deadly secret, all right, one that'll ruin this town if it spreads." The crowd murmured in agreement, their faces twisted by fear and ignorance. Jack and Elias swayed slightly on the platform, the rough hemp biting into their skin, their minds racing with memories of better days, childhood romps in green meadows back east, the laughter of their late parents, the simple joy of a shared meal under the stars. They had come west seeking fortune, but found only the harsh truth that greed could poison more than water. Hank, undeterred, pulled a weathered journal from his saddlebag. Pages filled with his own investigations, sketches of the mine, water samples tested in secret with a traveling chemist's kit. "Lies," he challenged, holding it aloft. "Or the truth you've buried to line your pockets? Ibis in the graves, Major. My marry among him. These boys ain't traitors, they're saviors." An unexpected turn came swift as a desert storm. The mayor's hired guns, three burly outlaws with badges pinned crookedly to their vests, drew their revolvers, aiming at Hank. "Back off, rancher, or join, I'm on the rope," one growled, his finger twitching on the trigger. The crowd gasped, some stepping back, others frozen in shock. Hank stood his ground, unarmed save for his words and that journal. But in that tense standoff, a profound realization dawned on young Tommy Ellis, the blacksmith's apprentice in the front row. Tommy had lost his sister to the same mysterious illness, and Hank's words struck like lightning. "Wait," Tommy shouted, his voice cracking but resolute. "Mr. Whitaker helped my pa when the forge burned down. Gave us cattle to sell, no questions asked. If he says it's true." His words rippled through the crowd, awakening dormant consciences. One by one, voices rose, farmers Hank had shared seeds with, miners he'd pulled from cave-ins, families he'd sheltered during floods. The power of humanity, often buried under survival's dust, began to surface. As tensions mounted, another twist unfolded. Elias, ever the quick thinker, spotted a loose plank on the gallows and whispered to Jack. "We's a subtle shift," they tested it, but the mayor noticed and ordered the executioner forward. "Hang 'em now," he roared. The trapdoor dropped with a sickening thud, and the brothers plummeted, but not to their deaths. Hank, in a blur of motion, had anticipated the move. Earlier that morning, he'd ridden to the gallows under cover of dawn and sabotaged the ropes with a hidden knife, fraying them just enough. As the nooses snapped harmlessly, Jack and Elias tumbled to the ground, gasping but alive. "Chaos erupted." The mayor's men fired wildly, but the crowd, now emboldened, surged forward. Tommy and others tackled the gunmen, disarming them with makeshift weapons, pitchforks, hammers, sheer willpower. Hank rushed to the brothers, helping them up, his hands steady despite the adrenaline. "You're safe now," he murmured, his eyes meeting theirs in a bond forged in that instant. The emotional climax built like a gathering thunderstorm. Cornered, the mayor confessed in a desperate bid for mercy, admitting the cover-up to protect his mining interests. It was just business, he whimpered as the townsfolk bound him. But Hank, kneeling beside the dazed brothers, saw beyond vengeance. He turned to the crowd, his voice steady and heartfelt. "We've all lost something, to this poison, loved ones, trust, our very souls. But thanking him won't bring 'em back. Let's show the world what kindness can do instead." In an act of profound compassion, Hank advocated for the mayor's exile rather than execution, insisting the town use the exposed mine's profits to purify the water and aid the afflicted families. It was a generous pivot, transforming rage into redemption. Jack, rubbing his bruised neck, looked at Hank with tears in his eyes. "Why risk it all for strangers?" Hank smiled faintly, the weight of his own grief lifting. "Ain't no strangers in this world, son. We're all just folks trying to do right. Selflessness ain't a choice, it's what makes us human." In the days that followed, the town transformed. The arsenic vein was sealed, clean wells dug with communal effort. Jack and Elias, once drifters, stayed on Hank's ranch, helping expand it into a haven for the weary. Word spread across the territory of the rancher who saved not just 2 lives, but an entire community through unwavering kindness. Families from afar came to share stories around campfires, tales of loss turned to hope. Hank, ever humble, would say, "It weren't me alone. It was all of us, choosing mercy over might." The brothers found purpose in teaching others about hidden dangers, their deadly secret now a beacon of truth. And as the sun set over the ranch one evening, with laughter echoing from a shared supper, Elias raised a toast, "To the power of humanity, may it hang not our necks, but our doubts." Years passed, and the story of that fateful day became legend, whispered in saloons and sung in ballads. But its true legacy lived in the hearts it touched. In a world rife with greed and peril, Hank Whitaker's act reminded everyone, from the bustling streets of New York to the quiet farms of the Midwest, that one person's selflessness could ripple outward, healing divides and igniting hope. The brothers, once marked for death, built families of their own, naming sons after the rancher who showed them grace. And in quiet moments, they'd gaze at the stars, feeling the profound realization that kindness wasn't weakness, it was the strongest force under the vast western sky. For in the end, it's not the secrets we keep that define us, but the compassion we give freely, turning strangers into kin and despair into dawn. The ranch prospered, not through riches, but through the bonds it fostered. Hank mentored young orphans, teaching them ranching skills alongside lessons in empathy. "See that calf struggling," he'd say, pointing to a newborn in the corral. "Help it stand, and it'll run someday. Sammy with folks." Jack took to this philosophy like a fish to water, organizing supply runs to neighboring tribes hit hard by droughts, sharing Hank's cattle without tallying debts. Elias, with his sharp mind, mapped safe water sources, preventing future tragedies. Their efforts drew admiration from across the USA, where tales of Wild West heroism often masked brutality, but this one shone with genuine humanity. Newspapers from Chicago to San Francisco printed accounts, inspiring readers to small acts of generosity in their own lives, a meal for a beggar, a hand to a fallen neighbor. One unexpected turn came when the exiled mayor, reformed by years of wandering penance, returned seeking forgiveness. Gone and humbled, he offered his ill-gotten gains to fund a school on Hank's land. The rancher, without hesitation, welcomed him not as an enemy, but as a prodigal soul. "We've all wandered lost paths," Hank said, clasping the man's hand. These reunions sparked a wave of reconciliations in the town, old feuds mended, prejudices dissolved. The emotional peak arrived during the school's opening ceremony, where children from diverse backgrounds recited poems of unity. Jack's daughter, a bright-eyed girl of 10, read aloud. In the shadow of the noose, light broke through, for a rancher's heart was true. Tears flowed freely, a collective release of buried pain, transforming the community into a tapestry of shared strength. As Hank grew older, his hair silvering like mountain snow, he reflected on that day. I didn't save him, he'd confide to the brothers over coffee. They saved me, from bitterness, from isolation. The profound realization hit deepest in quiet evenings, when the wind carried echoes of his wife's laughter. Her death had nearly broken him, but channeling grief into goodwill mended his spirit. The ranch became a symbol of resilience, attracting visitors from Europe and Asia, eager to witness this oasis of kindness amid the rugged frontier. Global audiences, through letters and telegrams, shared how the story inspired them, a Parisian baker aiding refugees, a Tokyo merchant forgiving debts. The story's heartwarming conclusion unfolded on Hank's final day, surrounded by the brothers, their families, and the town. With a weak but warm smile, he whispered, "Remember, the deadly secret ain't poison in the ground, it's forgetting, we're all connected. Spread kindness like wildfire, and watch the world bloom." It passed peacefully under the same sky that once threatened doom, his legacy etched not in stone, but in lives uplifted. Jack and Elias carried on, ensuring the ranch remained a beacon. In a nation built on dreams and determination, their tale reminded Americans, and the world, that true power lies in selflessness, turning potential tragedy into triumphant hope. For in the Wild West, or anywhere, humanity's light outshines the darkest secrets. But the ripples extended further. Years later, during a national crisis, a devastating flood in the Mississippi Valley, volunteers invoked Hank's name, organizing relief with the same spirit of generosity. Like the rancher who saved the hanged, they'd say, packing crates of food. Elias, now an elder statesman, traveled east to speak at gatherings, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "We were hanged for knowing too much," he'd begin, captivating audiences, "but saved by one man's heart. Let that be your guide." Jack's grandchildren, scattered across the USA, embodied this. One became a doctor in Boston, offering free clinics, another a teacher in California, fostering empathy in classrooms. In profound moments of realization, people everywhere grasped that kindness wasn't abstract, it was actionable, transformative. A factory worker in Detroit, inspired by a retold version in a dime novel, stood up against unsafe conditions, saving colleagues. A southern farmer shared crops during famine, echoing Hank's bounties. The story's universality resonated, in bustling cities or quiet prairies, selflessness bridged divides. Even in times of war or strife, it whispered hope, that one act could spark a chain, illuminating humanity's potential. As the 20th century dawned, the ranch evolved into a cooperative, owned by the community, symbolizing collective power. Tourists flocked, leaving with seeds of inspiration. "They hanged us for knowing a deadly secret," the sign at the entrance read, "but the rancher saved them, and us all." The emotional climax of countless lives was this enduring impact, compassion creating ripples that outlasted individuals.